The last thing Monica Jackson expected in a routine traffic stop was to face a seasoned police officer who would lie about their encounter. As a retired Navy SEAL lieutenant commander, she'd handled far more dangerous situations, but this one struck at the core of her identity. Standing in the dim evening light, checking directions on her phone, she never imagined she'd soon become the center of new real-life stories' most compelling tale of justice. Officer Simmons approached with an air of authority, his flashlight beam harsh against her face. 20 years of military service had taught Monica to read people, and everything about his stance screamed trouble. She could have easily overpowered him. Her SEAL training had prepared her for far worse, but she chose restraint, knowing this battle would be won in a different arena. When Simmons slammed her against his patrol car, fabricating charges of assault and resistance, he had no idea who he was dealing with. What followed would become a courtroom drama that exposed not just one officer's prejudice, but an entire system's flaws. This is the story of how a decorated veteran turned a moment of injustice into a powerful movement for change. In the Grand Courthouse, Monica's military composure remained unshaken as Officer Simmons delivered his fabricated testimony. Her dark eyes tracked his every movement, noting the subtle tells she'd been trained to recognize. The slight tremor in his hands, the forced confidence in his stance. She became hostile, Simmons declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. When I attempted to de-escalate, she reached for my weapon. A ripple of whispers swept through the gallery, but Monica remained still, her hands folded calmly on the oak table before her. Her young attorney, Benjamin Carter, shifted nervously beside her. We need more, he whispered, his anxiety palpable. His word against yours won't be enough. Monica's lips curved into a knowing smile. Patience, Ben. Truth has its own timing. The weight of the moment pressed down on the courtroom as the prosecution built their case. Memories of that night flooded back. The harsh beam of Simmons' flashlight, his immediate aggression, the cold metal of the patrol car against her cheek. 20 years of SEAL training had taught her to control her reactions, to choose her battles wisely. That night she'd chosen restraint, not out of fear but strategy. The defense's turn came, and Monica took the stand. The courtroom fell silent as she spoke, her voice steady and clear. I was checking directions on my phone when Officer Simmons approached. He didn't ask for identification. He demanded it. When I questioned why, he escalated immediately. The prosecutor pounced, circling like a predator. So you admit to questioning his authority? I questioned his motives, Monica corrected, her gaze unwavering. There's a difference. A significant one that speaks to the heart of this case. Benjamin played the bystander's video, and the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Simmons' voice rang out, harsh and biased. Women like you need to learn how to listen. The gallery erupted in murmurs of disgust, the judge's gavel barely maintaining order. During recess, Monica stood alone by the courthouse windows, her reflection overlaying the city below. Benjamin approached, clutching new documents. This is it, Simmons' personnel file. Multiple complaints of excessive force, all buried. Pattern of targeting minorities, especially women. They tried to hide it, but we found it. It's never been about just me, Ben, Monica replied, her voice soft but determined. It's about every person who couldn't fight back, every voice that was silenced. We're their voice now. Returning to court, the shift in power was palpable. Simmons' confident facade cracked as Benjamin presented the evidence. His fellow officers in the gallery began to distance themselves, their once unified front crumbling under the weight of truth. The defining moment came when Monica revealed her military service. I am Lieutenant Commander Monica Jackson, retired Navy SEAL, she announced, her voice carrying the weight of 2 decades of service. The courtroom fell silent, Simmons' face draining of color. Several jurors leaned forward, their expressions shifting from skepticism to rapt attention. For 20 years I defended this country's ideals of justice and equality, she continued, her gaze sweeping the jury. "I've faced enemies abroad, navigated hostile territories, and led teams through the most challenging conditions imaginable. But I never expected to face such blatant abuse of power at home, on the very streets I swore to protect." Her testimony continued, each word carefully chosen to illuminate the larger issues at stake. That night, Officer Simmons didn't see a veteran, a citizen, or even a human being. He saw what his prejudices told him to see. Someone he could dominate without consequences. Benjamin's closing argument resonated through the hushed chamber. "My client didn't resist arrest. She did something far more threatening to Officer Simmons. She questioned his unjust actions. This decorated veteran, who spent years protecting our freedoms, was brutalized for exercising those very rights." As the jury deliberated, Monica sat in quiet reflection. The case had become larger than herself. It was about accountability, about changing a system that too often protected its own at the expense of justice. Benjamin paced nervously, but Monica remained still, her military training evident in her calm demeanor. The verdict arrived swiftly. Not guilty on all charges. But Monica's victory came with an unprecedented addition. The jury's formal recommendation for a full investigation into Simmons' conduct and department practices. The judge's expression was grave as he ordered an immediate review of Simmons' past cases. Outside the courthouse, facing a sea of reporters, Monica stood tall. The same strength that had carried her through countless missions now radiated from her as she addressed the cameras. "This isn't about revenge," she declared, her voice clear and strong. "It's about reform, about ensuring that the power we give our law enforcement comes with proper accountability." The story spread rapidly across social media, becoming a rallying cry for police accountability. Monica found herself at the forefront of a movement, her military discipline and unwavering integrity lending credibility to the cause. Police departments nationwide began reviewing their training protocols and accountability measures. In the months that followed, her case sparked internal investigations in numerous precincts. Officer Simmons was dismissed, facing charges of his own. But for Monica, the real victory wasn't in one officer's downfall. It was in the changes his exposure brought about. She began speaking at police academies, sharing her story and advocating for better training and accountability. Her unique perspective as both a veteran and a victim of police misconduct brought a powerful voice to the ongoing national conversation about law enforcement reform. The case became a landmark example in police training programs, teaching future officers about the importance of ethical conduct and unbiased policing. Monica's fight for justice had transformed into something larger, a movement for systemic change, proving that one person's courage could inspire a nation to examine its conscience and demand better from those sworn to protect and serve. The courthouse steps were quiet now, months after the verdict. Monica stood there one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of justice. Her phone buzzed. Another precinct requesting her to speak about police reform. She smiled, remembering how her battle had sparked a nationwide conversation. Officer Simmons' case had led to 30 other cases being reopened, revealing a pattern of misconduct that could no longer be ignored. But more importantly, it had given courage to countless others who'd faced similar injustice. Her story, first shared on New Real Life Stories, had become a beacon of hope. "Sometimes the toughest fights aren't won with physical strength," she often told police cadets now, "but with unwavering dedication to truth." Her Navy SEAL training had prepared her for combat, but it was her moral compass that had guided her to this victory. If this story of courage and persistence touched your heart, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. New Real Life Stories is committed to bringing you powerful tales of triumph over adversity. Help us reach 10,000 subscribers so we can continue inspiring others with stories that matter. Because sometimes the most important battles are fought not on distant battlefields, but right here at home.